and a happy new year. We have 3 new board members who have joined us. If all of the board members could also be on mute. We have 3 new board members this evening: Joy Young, Robert Cianciulli, and Jordan Hyman. Jordan is our Mountainside representative, so we welcome them to our board. Mike, could I have a motion to return from exec session?
Motion to return from exec session.
Second.
Thank you. We are now back in our public session. The agenda says a flag salute. However, we already did our flag salute a little bit ago when we welcomed our new board members, so we completed that. Donna, can you share the results of the election?
The election was held November, and the ballots cast were: Joy Young received 3,781 votes. Robert Cianciulli received 3,223 votes. Sai Akari received 2,363 votes. Romney Kachari received 1,920 votes, and Peter Cheng received 1,446 votes. So Joy and Robert were elected to our board, and we welcome them tonight along with Jordan.
Great, thank you, Donna. The next, we did our oath of office for them. The next item on the agenda is the election of the board president. Donna?
Okay, are there any nominations for board president?
I nominate Doug Reinstein for president.
Second.
Okay, any other nominations?
Michael D'Aquila for board vice president.
Hold on, Angela. One at a time. Hold on, one at a time. We're just doing one at a time. We'll do vice president.
Sorry, skip the gun.
Okay. If there are no other nominations, can I have a motion to close the nominations?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I'll do a roll call vote and everyone can say if they agree with this. Mr. Hyman?
Yes.
Mrs. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Cianciulli?
No.
Mr. D'Aquila?
Yes.
Mrs. Penna?
Yes.
Ms. Riley?
Yes. Yes.
Mrs. Kirsch?
Yes.
Mr. Reinstein?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Reinstein, you are again the president of the board, so congratulations. And you can now take the nominations for vice president.
Great. Thank you very much. I look forward to leading this organization again next year. We will now take nominations for the position of board vice president.
I would like to nominate Michael D'Aquila for board vice president.
And I will second that.
We have a motion. We have a motion and a second from Mike. Are there any other nominations for vice president? Okay, we'll close the nominations for vice president. Donna, roll call.
Mr. Hyman?
Yes.
Mrs. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Cianciulli?
Yes.
Mr. D'Aquila?
Yes.
Mrs. Penna?
Yes.
Ms. Riley?
Yes.
Mrs. Kirsch?
Yes.
Mr. Reinstein?
Yes. Mike, congratulations. Welcome. Look forward to working with you and the rest of the board going into 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for your support.
Great. Could I get a motion for the approval of the minutes for our December 21st meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Yeah, John, let's just capture that Jordan and Joy and Robert would abstain because they weren't board members at the time. Moving on, 13, Donna, correspondence.
We have two letters from parents regarding special ed inclusion. These were comments that were made at the December 21st meeting. We have a letter from Mrs. Ringwood regarding current challenges in the schools. We had an email from Mrs. Taylor regarding previous incidents and the Berkeley Heights Public Schools Share Action Plan. And we had an email from Mrs. Wasser Berlin in support of Mr. Scott McKinney. We also had 2 OPA requests since the last meeting.
Can I ask a question about these OPA requests? What is this? What does it mean when it says emails from 156 pages of headers? What exactly is that?
Okay, Mr. Majewski requested the emails, board member emails for a certain period of time. And he didn't want the full emails. He just wanted the headers, which is this, to, from, and the subject. So
The subject.
right. So that alone was 156 pages of just header information. So now his follow-up request was for all of those emails. So that would be a lot of work, a large volume of information. So I'm working with him to try to narrow it down or make it a little bit more reasonable.
Is this for every board member or?
This was for every board member for a certain period of time. I think it was from January to September or January to July, but it started last January.
And I have to assume our lawyer has to review every email and redact necessary information if deemed so.
I redact the information and Kathy helps me with that, but we print them out, we read them, we redact appropriately. I will reach out to the lawyer if I do have questions or am uncertain about something.
If there's confidential information, let's say a parent writes to the board about something that they perceive is confidential, that is operable?
It is operable. Anything about their student is confidential. So we do read through it and we will redact what should be redacted. Any student information, any personnel information is redacted. Another thing that's redacted is if the board's talking about something, but it hasn't made a final decision about it, that can also be redacted.
I'm not sure people in the community really understand this. So I think from time to time, it's worth reminding them that, these emails are operable and there are people in the community opering them. So, they can always pick up the phone and have a conversation, in lieu of writing an email. So I just put that out there for those of you that are listening.
Great. Thank you, Chris.
Good point.
We'll go on to the report of our student representatives. Thomas, welcome. Happy New Year. Good evening, Thomas.
Hello, Happy New Year, and hello to all the new board members. So I'll get right into my report. In the week prior to winter break, clubs made the most of the last few days by hosting numerous events. FBLA members competed in the regional competitive events and experienced great success. Students placed first and third in the Securities and Investments exam, and another placed second in the Business Law exam. The students will continue preparing for the state level competition in March. Student Auxiliary collected over 50 care packages for veterans and began sending pen pal letters to seniors in town. Interact helped at the GLHS PTO clothing drive by collecting donated clothes. The Understanding Asian Culture Club co-hosted a meeting with the organization Dear Asian Youth Union County, where they discussed the steps they would like to see from the administration in response to the stories shared by previous GL students. Turning to events that have occurred following the break, the Spanish Club is preparing a video where students share their holiday tradition. SAGA is creating an online information resource for faculty, students, and whomever else where people can learn about the LGBTQ community or work to be a supportive ally. The club is also planning another round of lunch and learns to see if more teachers are interested in joining the newly formed support zone. Lastly, the club has created a form to collect members' input on GL's new gender-neutral bathrooms and are meeting tomorrow to discuss this change. If the activity of clubs in the new year is any indication of the future, the clubs will surely accomplish a lot.
Thomas, thanks very much. Emily Haynes, if you're out there, can you raise your hand? I see two other Emilys without last names, so I don't know which one is you. I will promote you once I see you are. If you raise your hand, you should probably come to the top of my screen. Maybe Emily's not available this evening. Okay, if she comes back, we will catch up with her when she comes back. Are there any questions for Thomas? Okay, Thomas, thanks. We will move on next to the report of the superintendent, Dr. Varley.
Good evening, everyone. I want to take a moment to recognize our board members. This is School Board Recognition Month, and our board members spend hours working to make Berkeley Heights Public Schools a better place, all on a volunteer basis. So therefore, I would like to read this resolution. Whereas the New Jersey School Boards Association has declared January 2021 to be the School Board Recognition Month, a time when all residents can acknowledge the contributions made by our local school board members. And whereas this Berkeley Heights Board of Education is one of 580 local school boards in New Jersey, which sets policies and oversees operations for public school districts. And whereas the Berkeley Heights Board of Education embraces the goal of high quality education for all New Jersey public school students. And whereas New Jersey schools local school boards help determine the educational goals for approximately 1.4 million children in pre-K through 12th grade. And whereas New Jersey's 5,000 local school board members who receive no remuneration for their services act as advocates for public school students as they work with administrators, teachers, and parents for the betterment of public education. And whereas school boards strive to provide the resources necessary to meet the needs of all students, including those with special needs, and whereas boards of education provide accountability to the public, they communicate the needs of the school district to the public, and they convey to school administrators the public expectations for the school. And whereas New Jersey can take pride in its schools, which rank among the nation's best in key achievement indicators, such as the National Assessment of Educational Progress Scores and the preparation for college through advanced placement offerings and SAT assessments. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Berkeley Heights Board of Education does hereby recognize the services of local school board members throughout New Jersey as we join communities statewide in observing January 2021 as School Board Recognition Month. And be it further resolved that the Board of Education Berkeley Heights Board of Education urges all New Jersey citizens to work with our local boards of education and public school staffs toward the advancement of our children's education. So I want to take a moment to thank you for all you do for our students in Berkeley Heights and in Mountainside. So thank you very much. I see that Emily's here. Do you want to jump back to her?
I do, and I just see Emily just joined. Oh, there's Emily. Emily, good evening. Happy New Year. Welcome.
It looks like she can't unmute.
She's going to get it. I have great confidence that she's going to unmute it. Hold on.
Hi, sorry. I thought the next meeting was on the 23rd.
That's okay. That's okay.
So
Well,
there's not much to say regarding sports, given that we didn't have much over the winter break and we aren't starting up until the 11th. But we do have, I know, cheer starting, as well as indoor sports had been approved. I'm not sure how GL is advancing with that. But then we have this third season starting in February. But other than that, we have no updates for sports given this time period because there was not many sports happening as of now.
Great, thank you, Emily. I suspect next month we'll have a lot more to hear from you. So
Yeah.
we look forward to that. So welcome, Happy New Year to you. And I look forward to another year with you and Thomas delivering updates for us. Dr. Varley, back to you for the rest of your report.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year, and welcome to the first meeting of 2021. I know that everyone is hoping we are in the home stretch of the pandemic and we will be on our way back to normal very soon. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge and welcome our new board members who are taking their seats tonight. Robert Cianciulli, who is rejoining us, and Joy Young, who was a first-time Board of Education member, and Jordan Hyman, our new Mountainside representative. Welcome and thank you for all the work you do for the Berkeley Heights Public Schools. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force is being formed. We have enough parent volunteers, and after my email today, I think we have enough of all types of volunteers. So we will be going through those students, former students, as well as teaching staff, and working on our task force. The committee will be guided, hopefully, by Mark Strachan, who is the consultant who led the district DEI implicit bias training at the start of the school year. As an update on the status of the investigation regarding the recent Instagram post discussed at the December 21st Board of Education members, as of today, we have approximately 45 current and former students who spoke, posted, or both. There were many individuals who could not be identified. If a former student has an allegation or a grievance, they may use our attorney's email address, which I sent out today. And if anyone wants it, they can request it from me or find it on our Facebook page. As it is bhformerstudents@cgajlaw.com. So I know that's a lot to write down right at this moment. By law, HIB incidents reported by current students must be investigated by the district's anti-bullying specialists. Incidents that were reported by former students will be investigated by Cleary, Giacobbe, Alfieri, and Jacobs, who specialize in education law. We are using an outside attorney so as to be transparent as possible. Once the investigations are complete, we will determine our next step. Starting on January 25th, there will be 2 dedicated gender-neutral bathrooms at GLHS. This project has been in the works for some time, and I apologize it was not up and running at the start of the school year. Unfortunately, it was one of those items that was delayed by the pandemic. The district has been working very closely with the Berkeley Heights Diversity Council, and they have asked me to announce that they will be holding an online celebration and day of service in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I encourage everyone to be involved, so please go to their website for more information, which is bhdiversity.org. Changing topics, the winter sports season is upon us. We have the start of ice hockey season, and it was delayed by COVID cases on our team from students in a partnering district, but they should be skating by January 15th. The Highlander basketball and fencing team opened the season on January 26th, and season 2A, swimming, indoor track and field, should hopefully begin on February 16th, and season 3, volleyball and wrestling, is scheduled, which is not in stone, to begin on 3/16. Cheerleaders will cheer, but they are only participating in the halftime show and will be competing virtually. We will be having a limited middle school sports schedule, but it will not include any games against teams from outside the district. We understand that having a sports season is an increased risk for students and coaches. However, the district also has a responsibility to educate the whole child, and we believe that athletic competition is an important part of that mission. Building on the lessons learned from a successful fall season, we believe that committing to a winter sports season that follows all, and I mean all, NJSIAA guidelines and health and safety protocols is a calculated risk that is in the overall best interest of our students. If at any point we feel that this risk is not worth the overall benefit, then we will revisit this decision. Parents and students should also be aware that by participating in sports, they are increasing their exposure and may need to quarantine due to increasing their exposure. I would like to take a moment to remind everyone that although the light is hopefully at the end of the pandemic tunnel, we must continue to be vigilant and stay disciplined with our mask wearing and social distancing. I want to remind parents that they must inform schools if their student tests positive for COVID and not rely on the Department of Health to inform us. The Department of Health has many cases it is dealing with, and our notification may be delayed. We are all exhausted from this pandemic and the restrictions, but we also know that the results of letting our guard down can be devastating. If we all buckle down, we will get through this together. Thank you.
Dr. Raleigh, thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions regarding Dr. Raleigh's comments about the winter sports schedule? I know we had comments before. We've gone through the fall sports schedule. This is the outdoor one. We're now about to approach a modified winter sports season schedule. So I just want to make sure that if there were any other questions for Dr. Varley about winter sports.
I have one quick question. Has there been interest or change in the interest in, to be able to field teams during this time?
So I will turn that over to Ann Clifton since she knows the ins and outs of everything.
Thank you. I appreciate the time to speak tonight. There's been a modified decrease in some interest, but we do have our numbers on our form relief and sports clearances are comparable to past seasons.
I have a question.
Yes.
So these students who are going to be playing these sports I'm assuming they are not going to be wearing masks and they're going to be going into other communities and they're going to be going back into the buildings, or are they going to be remote education for the semester while they're playing sports? Do you understand my question?
Go ahead. You want to talk, Ann? I can.
Sure. Maybe you can answer the remote part, but to my knowledge, let me jump in about the protocols very quickly. So our student athletes will be face covered at all times until strenuous exercise denotes that it's not safe for them to wear the mask any longer. I did speak to our school care station about that exact question. If a student athlete is preferred to wear the face mask during that strenuous activity, then they certainly may do that. That's obviously not a problem at all. Some of the referees may have face coverings on, our coaches and everyone else will have face coverings on at all times. And we had a long meeting with our coaching staff that is beginning on Monday, and they clearly understand that, we're going to have our student athletes face masks at all times until that cardio rate increases and it's not permissible, or maybe not a student athlete able to do that. Compete with it. And as far as remote learning, I think that's, there's no plans to my knowledge, and Dr. Varley, you can answer that if a student athlete is part of our sports program, that they would remain remote.
So we can't
I don't have an issue necessarily. I mean, people want to take calculated risks to increase their exposure, but then they're going to come back into the building where we have all these protocols of social distancing and mask wearing. And I'm assuming that when you say their cardio rate gets to a certain point, I'm having a hard time envisioning someone doing, 100 meter or 200 meter dash wearing a mask, or playing a long basketball game with a mask on. But maybe I don't understand what you're saying. So I would just assume under those circumstances, people are not wearing masks. And they will be in other communities interfacing with, other students. So I'm just trying to, my rational brain is just trying to understand, and then they're going to go back to school the next day. So.
And can you just clarify again, sorry, the actual winter sports that we're, the schedule that you're putting together is, which sports are they again?
Sure. So the ice hockey has already begun. They, as you know, we co-op with New Providence. So that season is already, the practice season has already begun. On Monday, we will begin fencing and our boys and girls basketball program. And then the next following season, that is what they're considering what we call season 2A. I'm sorry, season 2. 2A will be our outdoor track program and our boys and girls swimming program. And they will start in February, and then in early March, we will start what we're calling season 3, and that's wrestling and volleyball. So there is some timeline and some spread out time between the sports beginning. And then the plan is to begin our spring season outside at a delayed start time, but pretty much as long and lengthy protocols or a long length season as possible. There won't be a shortened season as these other sports are.
And just again, you said that it's recommended that none of them will be wearing masks when they participate, correct?
It's that's a wonderful question. Recommended is a challenging word, but I will tell you that I did speak to our care station doctor under advisement, and they did recommend that if a student athlete is unable to compete running up and down, as Christine just said, up and down the court with the mask on and not able to get oxygen through. We did trial 3 different masks over the break. Our coaches and our ice hockey players have tried out some face coverings that maybe they would be comfortable with, and we can suggest. So we did suggest out to our ice hockey team a mask that would go right onto their, it's proprietary to their face, to their helmets that they wear. So we got that information out to them today. And the other masks that we're looking into are a couple brands that we'll suggest.
So Dr. Raleigh, can you just answer the second part of Chris's question, which is, if a student is participating in sports, will that student be all remote? Can you answer the second part of that?
So we can't force parents to make their children remote, just like we can't force them all to come in. So it's a parental decision on whether they come into the building or whether they are remote students.
Great, thanks. Are there other questions about the sports, Jordan?
Just a quick one. And I know in the fall there was a program in place for like bracelets to limit how many fans and parents showed up at games. Is there a plan in place? Obviously, I assume it varies a bit by sport and by venue, but has that been discussed?
Yes, and welcome. That has been discussed. There'll be absolutely no spectators for any winter sports. We've put a plan in place where we will have huddle cameras that are going to be in the blue and red gym. We're going to be able to use a remote live stream. I've worked with Mr. Voorhees on our swim meets, and let me get back to swimming in a second, but our fencing meets, so that they will be streamed live for our parents to be able to view and family members. And then swimming, just so you know, swimming, all of our home meets will be what we're calling virtual meets. So we will not be inviting teams in. We will be scoring and timing races, and then we will submit those scores times to our opponent, and the scoring will be done that way. And there's no plans as of this moment from the NJSA or the Union County Conference in regards to outdoor track. So I think we're just trying, indoor track, which will probably be outdoor track of what they're calling a polar bear season.
Thank you.
So the only alternative to what you've laid out is no sports. Since you can't mandate that people who participate remain remote to protect the other students. So the only alternative is no sports. And I'm assuming since we're playing other districts are engaging in winter sports, similar to your recommendation.
At this point, yes. In the Union County Conference, there's been some subtle changes in some local schools in regards to unable to find third-party venues, and for example, like a team may not be able to find a pool that can support them, so they may not be having their swim program. But for the most part, yes, we had an NJSI kickoff meeting on Tuesday, and they have met with the New Jersey Department of Health, and they are moving forward with sponsoring a winter season.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Varley, can I assume that as our athletes come into the schools, we will be following all of our social distancing protocols and masks, and that could keep our other students as safe as we possibly can?
So you were kind of breaking up a little bit, Helen. I think you asked if our students are coming back into the building with social distancing protocols and masks. Is that what you asked?
Right. Dr. Varley, I think Mr. Kirsch may be asking about visitors coming in.
We don't allow visitors in the building.
No, visiting teams. I'm sorry.
Visiting team.
Yes.
Okay.
So if it's okay with you, I can answer that very quickly. We're right in the midst of designing our gyms so that everyone will be 6 feet apart. We'll probably pull, if you've been in the blue gym, we'll pull out the bleachers behind where the team normally sits and have all of our players 6 feet apart. We'll have X's on those bleachers. Our visiting team will follow suit. And because of Executive Order 196, unfortunately, only required game personnel will be in the room in the gym at the time. So the plan will be to include our cheerleaders because we feel that's very important, that they will come in once the teams go to their respective classrooms, social distance, masks on, windows open. Our cheer team will come in and do a halftime cheer dance, whatever they prefer at that time.
And I'm curious, what are our surrounding districts doing? Are they having winter sports?
Yes. At this point, as mentioned before, they're moving forward with the same plan that the NJSI has laid out.
And really a question for Donna. I'm assuming we'll have the cleaning protocols after that, after the games and everything that night before the next school day.
Yes, the custodians and Anne is working with the custodians to make sure that all the protocols are in place and that this gyms will be cleaned at the end of the day for school the next day.
And all of our coaching staff receive what we're calling their disinfectant kit, and we use the same exact thing in the fall. That will, all of the equipment used will be sprayed down and will be managed. It's all things work through our building and grounds that are COVID killing disinfectants. So we feel very comfortable. We have backup masks in case there are any mask malfunctions. We have gloves, and we created 3 different hand sanitizer stations that are on wheels that we'll be able to use at any given time.
Thank you.
I have one. What about transportation? I know it's, getting the teams to and from, like, how does that change in the winter compared to, fall? And
well, I think our bus rides will be a lot colder because we will still follow the same exact protocol. We will have, our windows down for the circulation, masks on at all times, no eating, no drink in the bus at the time. We have 20 passengers. We've worked very closely with Kelly Sheehan, and we feel pretty comfortable that, what we completed in the fall, we can transition to the winter, and we'll have 20 people on the bus, including 1 coach. So it'll be 19 players. We also too have limited, we've always had such wonderful support from our managers and stats, and we're going to just mandate that 1 stat person to keep the book will travel with each program. So, and we've worked with all the coaches to align our buses with what they need at this point.
Great, Anne, thank you very much. Any final questions regarding athletics? So Anne, thank you. I know you've met with the athletics committee both before the end of last year and this year, and I know you and your staff have done a lot of work in the best interest of our students. I know you're taking a lot of the necessary protocols. I know you've communicated broadly to the coaches and to the parent community and to the athletes about what to expect. And I know I expect there'll be some curveballs along the way, as there are with any season that we've had to deal with. So thank you. And obviously, the athletic committee is available to you should you need them at any time during this season. So
Means
thank
a
you.
lot. Thank you for your support.
Great. Okay, Melissa, I assume that concludes your superintendent's report.
yes. that
Excuse me,
concludes
Doug, I have a question. Excuse me. I have a question on the first half of Melissa's comments, her
Okay.
report, specifically relating to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force. So can you just talk a little bit about how that task force will be different from the diversity committees we have? Because I know we have 6 diversity committees. We have a diversity committee in each building, I believe, that's made up of parents, teachers. I'm not sure if students are on, at least are students on that committee? Those
Students
committees
are on
too?
the CMS and the GL committees, and we have action teams at every building, but in the elementary, we have 1 elementary committee.
And then I know that there's a district-wide diversity
Yes, there's a
committee.
district-wide diversity.
Okay, so all of those 6 building-based state-based diversity committees will roll up into the district-wide. So can you just maybe help me understand the different roles or how you envision that? I know a lot of this is evolving, so as best you can, give me some idea as to sort of the different missions or different focuses of the task force versus the diversity committee.
So our diversity committees are working on changing curriculum as well as holding celebrations and making sure that all of our students are celebrated and included. The task force is going to look at metrics and how do we know we're successful? And so it's going to be a process of how we're going to get where we want to get, which is making Berkeley Heights Public Schools an entirely inclusive community through training, through professional development, through celebrations, through working with the diversity committees, but also having how are we successful, how do we get there, and what metrics do we use to guide us along the way. So
it's more culture focused.
Yes.
Overall culture focused.
Culture focus. This is a systemic change and a systemic issue. And so we need to lay it all out. It's something that's going to happen for years to come. And culture is hard to change. And so we need a group of people to put us on the right path, along with a consultant.
And will there be a board representative on that task force?
There absolutely could be a board. As of right now, I don't have a board representative. My vision was that the task force would come back and report to the board as far as where it's going so that all board members would be a part of that discussion.
That makes sense. One other thing, when you get a chance, I would like to know who is on these diversity committees in the various buildings because, and I did speak to a couple of my colleagues on the board about this. I'm not saying board members should be on those committees, but I think maybe showing up at some of those meetings. I know they're relatively new and, you know, then we had COVID to deal with. So they're just kind of taking root now, but having board members, you know, drop in and just make sure people understand that we support this good work and that we want to make sure they have a direct line into the board and we take everything they're doing very seriously, I think could be very helpful.
Absolutely.
So when you get a chance, you know, that would be good information for some of us on the board who are interested in maybe popping into some of those committee meetings.
Absolutely.
Dr. Wiley, I know this is a work in progress, but how often do you plan to meet with the task force?
Well,
I'm sure.
As of right now, since we just met with the consultant today, Mr. Hopkins and I met with the consultant this morning, we're getting back information from him on where we start and where we go. And so I don't have that exact information. I'm hoping our first real meeting will be before the end of January, where we start the hard work.
Any other questions for Dr. Varley regarding her superintendent's report tonight?
Thank you.
Dr. Varley, thank you for that report. We'll move on. Does anybody have a liaison report this evening?
Yes, 1 second. As some of you know, I am on the Mayor's Advisory Council on Truth, Racial Hearing, and Transformation. We met on December 28th. We had a guest speaker from the County Superintendent of Schools staff who gave a presentation. Who gave a presentation on what is going on at the county level, specifically relating to training programs for administrators and teachers relating to the LGBTQ community. And as I previously mentioned to Dr. Varley, I liaised with that woman and said, if they're developing programs at the county level, that could ultimately be shared with our district and other districts that, you know, depending upon how good they are, you know, maybe it's something we could leverage. So that's the end of my report.
Great, thank you, Chris. Are there any other liaison reports this evening?
I have several New Jersey school boards that announce this as School Board Recognition Month. For members, if you check your school board notes or the NJSBA website, there are numerous webinars and papers on challenges that all boards are facing, if you would like that information. The county school boards is having their first meeting of the year on January 13th. The topic is challenges facing local boards and districts. Any board members interested, Kathy in the board office is very helpful in registering us. Ed Services is on remote until January 19th, and their remote has been going fairly well considering the population that they serve. And the distribution of the masks from the state police is complete to all districts. And it's Environmental Commission, they have moved ahead giving their report to the Township Committee to apply for the Sustainable Jersey Award. And they're always working on watershed and the TREX program at the collection site at Taylor Rental is on hold for now. That's the end of my report.
Great, thank you, Helen. Any other liaison reports for this evening? Okay, we'll keep moving on. A facilities report, Donna.
I wanted to let everyone know the custodians and maintenance staff are using this time where with students being remote to catch up on building maintenance projects. They're doing preventative maintenance on equipment. They're changing exit lights. They're working on the rooftop fans. They're making plumbing repairs. They're turning off the water in school, which they can't normally do, and making repairs in the schools. They're doing a lot of painting projects at the middle school. They've, in the multipurpose room, they replaced the ceiling. They put in new LED lighting, and now they're working on sanding and improving the stage floor. So in each building, they have different projects that they're doing, but they're getting to projects that are on their bucket list that they haven't been able to get to. So they're using the time well and making improvements in the schools.
Great, thanks, Donna. Any questions for Donna on the facilities report? Okay, we will keep moving on. We are now going to move to the citizens hearing portion of our meeting. Let me just set some ground rules as I typically do. To be recognized this evening, please ensure your first and last name is listed on your device, and you should use the raise your hand function. When I see you, I'll unmute you, allow you to take yourself off of mute and address the board. Although not required, we prefer that you use your camera so we can see you as well. If you have more than one question, please ask them all at the beginning. Also, the board recognizes that students and staff members' right to privacy and therefore encourages all members of the public to address their concerns regarding individual students and our staff members by meeting privately with the appropriate administrative staff members. When addressing the board in a public forum, members of the public should refrain from identifying any student or staff member by name and are solely responsible for their comments, which could be considered defamatory or slanderous according to the state laws of New Jersey. And as a reminder, each resident will have 3 minutes to speak. With that, I do see a couple of hands raised. Wendy Goldstein, I see you first.
Good evening. My
Good
name
evening.
is
Good evening, Wendy.
Good evening and Happy New Year. My name is Wendy Goldstein, and I live in Berkeley Heights, and I teach Spanish in grades 2 through 5 at both William Woodruff and Mountain Park Elementary Schools each day. I teach a 6-day schedule, alternating 3 days in one building and then 3 days in the other school. With the hybrid schedule, I, as well as other related arts teachers, see a few hundred children in each building during each of these 3-day rotations. I travel room to room, pushing a cart, wearing a non-medical N95 mask and shield. I often worry that I could be a super spreader from room to room and school to school. I wash and sanitize my hands, following the protocol, carrying spray bottles on my cart, being very cautious about touching anything other than my own things in each and every classroom that I teach in. I stay away from all staff members as best I can in both schools. I often have difficulty getting my cart into the classroom and keeping a safe 6-foot distance apart from the children. Although most desk shields are in place during this hybrid model, the shields are still a bit flimsy and the children are young and they often do not always keep their chairs safely behind the desk. Often the children will have their mouth covered, but not their little noses. As thoughtfully and caring as I can, I point to my own nose covering under my shield and show the children that we all need to stay covered, explaining that I know it's not easy, but this is what we all need to do in order to try and remain safe and healthy. Some children, unfortunately, even pull their mask off when they sneeze, cough, or talk. I am teaching under these conditions because I love to teach. With the help of the 2 building principals at both Woodruff and Mountain Park, I feel that they are doing the absolute best that they can to try and keep us all safe during this deadly pandemic. I still feel the need, however, to come home each afternoon, change my clothes in the laundry room, and shower in an effort to not bring COVID germs into our home. I'm speaking today because I'm really concerned with Plan A beginning next week, which means bringing back all the children. The classrooms and hallways have limited space, and in my opinion, there will be no way to maintain safe distancing, especially with my cart. There already is a surge of the virus as a result of the holiday gatherings and travel. New Jersey reports a single-day record today of 6,314 COVID cases with 123 new deaths. I just read this evening that teacher COVID rates are 4 times higher than any other profession. There are 17 reported cases in the district as of today, with 5 of them at the K-5 level. This would mean under Plan A, at least 5 more quarantines. This surge, along with a more contagious variant of the virus, doesn't seem like a safe time to increase our in-person classroom enrollments. Many of us are really worried for our health and safety, including the health and safety of all of our Berkeley Heights families. Vaccines seem to be right around the corner. I pray each and every night that I can stay safe, not just for me, but for my family and friends as well. Everyone wants school to be back to normal. I wish it could be too. I wish every day that, but it isn't safe, and I experience more exposure than most on a daily basis. It isn't safe for any of us. I was just wondering if the district has obtained advice from medical professionals as to whether it's safe to return to Plan A, which does not include social distancing for many of us. Again, I'm asking from the bottom of my heart to please delay Plan A. Please wait in bringing back full classrooms of in-person children at this time. Please wait until we are all vaccinated. Please keep us all safe. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk.
Wendy, thank you very much for your comments tonight. The next person I see is Mike LeBond. Mike, let me find you, Mike. There you are. Mike, can you hear me?
I can.
Great. Welcome, Mike. Good evening.
Just my video has been disabled, so it does need to be turned on. Just a comment on, I unfortunately joined the meeting a little late, so I don't know if this was covered, but I'm concerned about the district's investigation and the lack of a limit on the budget being set for the investigation of what went on with bullying accusations. With no limit on the cost here, you can see overruns in the tens of thousands of dollars, and that could cause severe budget issues in the future. And earlier this year, the district was noting significant issues with budget, and I'm just remain concerned that this investigation may turn into a long-term witch hunt with no clear objective other than to see, well, something happened 20 or 30 years ago, and there's no resolution for things like that. And I do appreciate the quick response I got from Dr. Varley when I emailed her earlier this week expressing these concerns, but there seems to be no long-term plan here. We're going to investigate it to what end, and spend how much to investigate things that happened perhaps decades ago. I just want a limit here on the cost of this, because this could spiral into thousands and thousands of dollars on a witch hunt.
Dr. Varley, you want to just talk a little bit about how the investigation will proceed and the parameters we're setting for it?
So I spoke to the attorney soon after you and I went discussed email, and we talked about him giving me an update on a regular basis. Like if he sends out, let's say 35 letters, and how many people come back and want it to be investigated, and then he will keep me abreast of what the cost is going to be. So I will keep the board informed as it comes forward. He has done this is in a similar district with a similar situation, and it did not get into the tens of thousands, if that helps. So we are hoping for a quick resolution, but we definitely want a resolution and a solid investigation.
Great, thank you, Dr. Varley. Next person I see is Mary Needenfor. Mary. Mary, good evening.
Hello. Hello. I'm trying to start my video, but there we go. Hello.
Good evening.
Hello. I am Mary Needenfer. I am the librarian at Woodruff and Hughes Schools. Like most special area teachers, I work with over 400 students and well over 30 staff members as I move from classroom to classroom teaching my library classes. I'm very concerned with the decision to move to Plan A. I think it is unsafe for our students and staff. We cannot be socially distanced in most, if not all, of the classrooms I enter to teach. In my opinion, with the current COVID conditions in Berkeley Heights, Plan A is a reckless option. Dr. Varley and board members, I am personally inviting you to stop by Woodruff on days A or B, or Hughes on days C through F in our rotating schedule, to see our classrooms and to participate in a library lesson. Thank you.
Mary, thank you very much for your thoughts this evening. Ramya Kasturi, you are next. Ramya, good evening. How are you tonight?
Hi, Doug. How are you?
Good evening.
Hi, everyone. I just have a few quick questions about the process for reporting incidents by former students to the law firm. I know, Dr. Varley, you might not have the answers, so I'll just lay them out for you, and then you can give them to me whenever you have the opportunity to circle back with the attorney. But first and foremost, I was just wondering under what state or federal law the investigation will take place. Will it be the same HIB laws? Because I wasn't sure if HIB applies to former students, or will it be a different set of state or federal laws? I also wanted some clarification on exactly who the client will be. I'm assuming the district is the client of the attorney, and therefore the district will be afforded the attorney-client privilege and not the students that are sharing their stories. So, I mean, I think parents and students would be interested as to where exactly the privilege lies. And if it's true that if it lies with the district, then how are these attorneys going to guarantee that the stories will remain confidential? Is there going to be a confidentiality agreement signed with the students and the parents? And then I just have some other questions about, you know, if the attorney is actually representing the district and is not representing the students or the parents, then what about any potential conflict of interest that might arise? So for example, if a student shares their story with the district's attorney, but then later decides that they actually want to bring suit against the district, how does that work in terms of a conflict of interest because they've already shared their story with the district attorney? And along the same vein, is there going to be any explicit, you know, document or process whereby the students and parents understand that they're not waiving any rights by speaking with the district's attorney? So I know there was a lot of questions. I don't know if you have all the answers, but I'm happy
I can assure you I don't have all the answers, but I will say, in speaking with the attorney and the attorney's partner, what they have done in the past is if a student, they send a letter to each former student, and all of our former students are adults at this time. So what they do, they send a letter, and then the student it's on the former student to reach back out to the attorney to have the discussion and have the investigation. And then they go through the process of, you know, discussing what occurred and then trying to find corroboration or see if the former student has witnesses that they would like to have them contact. And then the attorney contacts the district and says, this is what happened. Do you have evidence that counteracts that? And it just goes back and forth. In the end, the attorney would write a report that would be for the board, and then the board would be required to take action if it was against employees. If it's student to student, they're adults now. There is nothing that we can do for former student and former student. But if it is student and employee and they're still our employee, then the board has the right to take action, the responsibility to take action.
Okay, I get that. I guess I would just like some more clarification as to actually the relationships between.
And that's something I'll have to find out. I don't know the answers to your questions.
Okay, yeah. So, and if you want me to put them in writing or send you an email, I'm happy to do that too, because I know I just threw a lot at you.
That would be great.
Great, Ramya. Thank you very much. We'll get those, and yeah, drop a quick email. Well, I'm sure will be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Emily Ramos. Emily, good evening.
Turning on my video, but so I wanted, I guess, a question. Sorry, is it working now? A comment on the task force versus the diversity committees. I'm still not sure of the distinction between those two things, and I'm sure that will come to light as the ball gets rolling on the task force. But I think given that we will have more committees focused on diversity and inclusivity, it's important that we have clearly defined goals and objectives so we know what we're working towards. I think if we have goals, we can determine action items for all committees, no matter what the committee is. We can have standardization, communication across schools, and we can measure our progress along the way. I think that, I get that metrics are being used for the task force versus the diversity committee, but I do think that a way to measure, whether it's KPIs, whether it's number of metrics, a way to measure what we are doing, that would be extremely helpful. So thank you.
Great, Emily, thank you very much. Stacy Saravay. Stacy, good evening.
Hi, Doug.
How are you tonight?
I'm fine. How about you?
I am well. Welcome.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on Wendy Goldstein's speech. I'm sorry, I don't know if my video is working, but I thought she made some really great points, but she also asked a question, and I think that got overlooked. So I want to ask that question and sort of expand on it a little bit. She asked about the board. Has the board obtained any advice from an epidemiologist or a medical professional about Plan A? And I want to add to that. Have you asked advice in light of this new, more contagious variant of the coronavirus and what effect it has on whether it is safe to move to Plan A? And, you know, because it does not include social distancing. And if not, is the board going to get that advice and factor it into the decision-making process before moving to Plan A?
Dr.
So
Rowley?
I can answer as far as I'm in constant contact with the Department of Health, and they have approved our plan to move to Plan A. As we've talked about multiple times, Chatham is in Plan A, Summit is in Plan A, and New Providence is in Plan A, as well as Mountainside. And so we know that as of right now, none of those districts have had any major outbreaks. We all have, every district in the state of New Jersey has small confined outbreaks. Other than, you know, the high school, we've definitely had a large outbreak at the high school, and, you know, we look like we're having another one right now. But in the K-5, it tends to be smaller outbreaks, and children are more confined at home as well as not involved in sporting activities.
Yeah, I'm asking because I actually was quarantined, and I don't want to have to do that again. So even though there aren't large outbreaks, small outbreaks still affect teachers and students. And it seems to me like this new variant could cause more outbreaks. And I just wonder if it makes sense to wait even just a little while to see what the effects of the variant will be, but also to see if the numbers go down in New Jersey. I just don't know. Have you been in touch with them very recently? Like, we had over 6,000 cases in New Jersey today. And in Berkeley Heights, we seem to have like 5 to 12 cases every single day, which in a small town is quite a lot. It's like 40 cases per 100,000 at least. So I'm just wondering if like that information that you've shared with the Board of Health is, or have you had a current conversation with them?
I spoke with them today.
Okay, and they're still good?
They're still good.
We are really worried at the elementary schools, and it's tough. It's tough to teach under those conditions. So I just wanted to make that point, and thank you for answering my question. But I really also want to please pray that you keep an eye on the numbers, keep an eye on this variant. And if it doesn't seem to make sense, let's just wait a little while. Thanks.
Thank you.
Casey, thank you very much for your comments. Mary Ellen Taylor, you are up next. Good evening, Mary Ellen.
Good evening. I want to say that the reason for me coming forward is we are well documented with what happened to our family, and ours was a little bit different because it was basically a witch hunt. My husband had a brain tumor for 25 years, and very discriminatory behavior from police, township committee, schools, and with the disabled, it's well known to the state level. They say, yeah, it becomes a real hellhole for families because there is so much discrimination against the disabled, period, flat out. And as the years have gone on, a lot of bad players are being peeled away. Some of them are out of the township, but I'm very concerned for what is going to represent the children's rights. And these are young adults that they are brave enough to come forward to say that Berkeley Heights has had a problem and has a problem. And an attorney hired by the district isn't really representing the rights of those children. And the parents have to realize that. Basically, what you're doing is you're sending somebody to interview to see what your risk factors are. And that person, not knowing the law well, will not be represented. I called the prosecutor's office today and suggested that they get involved with this in the Attorney General's office. And they should be the ones interviewing the victims. And they are victims. My daughter was forced to graduate. We didn't have any say in it. She's just graduating, we're getting her out. So I'm very concerned for the children and the families, and I think Berkeley Heights is not representing their rights by doing it this way. So I thought I would speak up because I did do some things, and there's casework there. It's all laid out. And I actually told them that our names were disclosed when my daughter was underage in courts, which is against the law. So it was, and in a rotunda in Union County, the attorneys were laughing, we're going to decimate this family. Like I couldn't hear them. So families that are going to get involved in this need to realize this is not their representation. And I think the law firm that you have hired should work with the prosecutor or the Attorney General's office so that they can interview these victims. And they were victims, they're traumatized. You don't make mothers cry. You don't prohibit a father that was going to die from a brain tumor not to be able to see his daughter graduate high school. Anyone can tell any story. And I think Mrs. Poe said it best in the meeting with Angie Devaney and them last month when she was, saying that she lost the election. It is wickedly mean in this town, the politics. And one of the council members came to my home in October, and my husband only passed away last November. And she came to my home and she knocked on the door, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be talking to any of them. I know all of them, and I don't want to be talking to any of them right now. Because we didn't get to live because of what this town did to us. And it was all discrimination against the disabled, period. So I hope when you have these committees that, metrics are garbage if you're only measuring to make yourself look good. Metrics are garbage if people are placating. But Mrs. Poe said it best that, it's mean. And she said something about the town council that I think the Board of Education, I hope does not do this to people because I have not been involved in it. I would hope that you're above it because you work with children. But she said that when residents would come to town council meetings, they'd go after families. They go after individuals that they didn't like what they said. So what metrics are you doing if you're going after people to shut down their voice in democracy? Who is being protected there? And this particular council person that came to my house said that, and I don't know if this is true or not, and I'd love to know it. Is this just politicking so they could get the vote? Said that their child's internship was pulled by our mayor for punishment. I was like, really? That's not very nice.
Could I just ask you to wrap up your
Yes, I'm wrapping up in the way of, I called the prosecutor's office and asked them to get involved. I told them if they check on the PACER system, my daughter's identity was put out to the public because that was to punish our family. It is very important that if the district is going to do something, that each individual that has come forward, and it took a lot of courage for those kids to do that, they were victimized by a system, that they know that their rights are not being protected. Because the last thing I want to see for some of these people that's so willing, they came forward, and a lot of it is really from probably flashback. And so you're dealing with young adults, you each have children, and you don't want your families treated that way. So it's your obligation to make sure that these young adults that were courageous enough to come forward know that your attorney is not looking out for their best interest long-term.
Okay.
So what the prosecutor, if you just give me 2 more minutes, because I think this is a very important topic.
Ms. Estelle, hold on a second. I've given you almost 7 minutes of time. for 3 minutes. We've heard a number of your comments tonight about some of the things. I'll let you make one last comment and then we're going to move on. You've had plenty of time. We've heard you clear. We understand what your concerns on, what you said. You can wrap up your
All
comments.
right. What I said to the prosecutor's office has told me there's units that can work with people that have been victimized. They can represent the victims. And, you know, people are concerned about the money. They should be concerned about somebody's life. We've had many, many suicides at GL. I went to GL. I know I was disabled. I know how brutal it was to go through that system.
Okay, Ms. Teller,
So thank you. I think the problem is that we get 3 minutes or 5 minutes. And like Mrs. Poe said, we shut down the public. Thank you.
I will make one comment to that, and thank you for your comments. We don't shut down the public. Every person who who wants an opportunity to address this school board has an opportunity to do that in a public session. And anybody who also wants to address the school board has an opportunity to email either a board member or members of the administration, and they will get a prompt reply. So I do disagree with that statement. We are very accessible, both in the public format as we are at every single one of our meetings and outside the public sessions via email or phone. Moving on, Dan McGovern, I see you out here tonight. Let me unmute you. Oh. Dan, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening and Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year, Dan.
As Doug said, I'm Dan McGovern, teacher of physics at Governor Livingston and president of the Berkeley Heights Education Association. On behalf of the BHEA members, I want to welcome the new Board of Education members and thank you in advance for your service to our community. When I started my role as president, I never imagined I'd have to speak out at these meetings as much as I had to during the COVID crisis, pleading with this board to properly consider the health and safety of the students and staff of this district. For the past 8 weeks, the NG Cali reports have indicated we are in the orange zone and that districts should be planning for all remote instruction. Additionally, Dr. Varley announced today that the district has 17 new positive cases. We are clearly in the midst of another outbreak, yet the district is adamant about moving to Plan A in grades 1 through 5 on Monday, against the guidance of the state and in open defiance of the data. The reports around the country of completely booked ICUs should cause you to pause this dangerous decision. Additionally, the COVID variant running rampant in the United Kingdom is here, and the data suggests that this variant is considerably more contagious than what we're used to, including in schools, to the point where the UK has once again gone into lockdown, this time until at least March. Yes, the vaccine rollout has begun, but it has only just begun. We are woefully behind our goal of 20 million vaccines in the first month nationwide. Our district, the state, and our country are not ready for normalcy yet, despite us wanting to be, and we want to go back to normal. It would be a mistake to pretend that we are. Let's please step back from unnecessarily risking the lives of our students and staff by packing grades 1 through 5 into classrooms like sardines in a can. The district must wait to make this move until the data and vaccine rollout supports that decision. Thank you.
Dan, as always, thank you for your comments. Stephanie Spano, excuse me. I've just unmuted you.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can. Stephanie, good evening. Welcome.
Hi. Dear Dr. Varley and members of the Board of Ed, my name
Hey,
is Stephanie
Stephanie.
Spano.
Hey, Stephanie, could you just try to speak a little bit louder?
Is this better?
Oh, that's much better. Great.
Okay, I got my volume up. So I'll start over. Dear Dr. Varley, members of the Board of Ed, my name is Stephanie Spano, and I teach at Mary K. McMillan, Mountain Park, Thomas P. Hughes, and William Woodruff schools. I spoke at the December 21st Board of Ed meeting and shared my concerns about moving grades 1 through 5 to Plan A on January 11th. I could say that nothing has changed since then, but that would not be true. Since December, our district's region has been at the high risk or orange COVID-19 activity level for an additional 3 weeks. Since December, the number of reported positive cases in the Berkeley Heights community has increased by 103 and reported school cases increased by 22. What has not changed are the Department of Health recommendations for districts with an orange or high risk CALI score that say to, quote, restrict activities that involve interaction with multiple cohorts and consider implementing fully remote learning. You've made the difficult but appropriate decision to keep grades 6 through 12 on a hybrid model. I encourage you to do the same for grades 1 through 5 and postpone the move to Plan A until it is truly safe to do so. Dr. Varley, in your email to the community this afternoon, you said cases are on the rise. And at the beginning of this meeting, you said that we need to buckle down. I completely agree with you on that. I work in all 4 buildings affected by this decision and teach hundreds of students. My question to you is, are you willing to meet with special area teachers to discuss additional measures we can take to continue instruction, but in a manner that does not put us or hundreds of students at risk?
Absolutely. I will meet with the special area teachers.
Thank you.
Great, Stephanie, thank you for your question. Ursula Engel. Ursula, good evening.
Hi, good evening, Dr. Varley and members of the board. First, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Ursula Engel. I teach Spanish at GL, and I am also one of the co-advisors to the Saga Club. I am here speaking tonight because I'm very concerned about the proposed plan to reopen the schools for in-person instruction and for going forward with Plan A. Currently, New Jersey is in the orange zone, and so clearly it is in the district's best interest to continue with virtual learning. In the beginning of the school year, parents are notified that they had to fill out a health form for their child before they were to come to school to show that they don't have any COVID symptoms. Every morning, staff members receive a student health report from Ms. Donardi, a current interim vice principal, that shows which students need to go to the nurse to get screened because parent or guardian has not filled out the form. I have looked at the data from these emails and I have found the following. These calculations are from October 30th to December 23rd. With cohort A on average, every day about 80 students had to be screened by the nurse. The highest number in this cohort was 113 on December the 14th. With cohort B on average, every day, 92 students had to be screened by the nurse. The highest number in this cohort being 136 students on December 7th. Clearly, based on these numbers, it is clear that parents who are choosing to send their children for in-person instruction are not following the rules set by the administration. Also, it is alarming that these numbers are so high, considering the fact that GL had to close for several weeks because of Halloween parties, where many students contracted the virus. One would assume that after the closure of GL after these Halloween parties, parents and students would adhere more strictly to filling out the health screening form prior to coming to school, as well as adhering to social distancing guidelines put in place by the governor. Clearly, from the facts and figures that I just shared, along with the news of numerous parties that have been held over the holiday, this is not happening. On the contrary, this data is showing once again the community's inability to take virus seriously. How are we expected to go back for in-person instruction or even go Plan A when it is evident by all of this data that this is not going to work and more people are going to get sick? I am a single parent of a 7-year-old, and I have been taking every precaution to not get sick. It infuriates me that the place where I work is not taking the same precautions. If I get sick, where does that leave my son? I know I am not the only one in this situation. In the last board meeting, students spoke courageously about the suffering they experienced for years and continue to experience in all of our schools. It broke my heart to hear their stories, and I was proud of their bravery. Clearly, there were many warning signs, but the administration did not take heed. I commend Dr. Varley and members of the board for taking that matter seriously now. Better late than never. We are all giving you the warning signs now. Myself, as well as many of the staff, including students and families in the community, have lost loved ones in this pandemic. I hope and expect that you take this matter seriously as well. We have all suffered enough during this current situation. Take heed now, learn from the past. Don't wait until it's too late. Thank you.
Ursula, thank you very much for your comments. Sean Procaccini. Sean, good evening.
Good evening. Hi. Oh, I can't turn my camera on, but hi, my name is, here I am. Hi, I'm Sean Procaccini from the class of 2014, graduate from GL. I want to start by saying that a natural thing that is expected to happen after significant social movements and after, after in any large scale organized way that oppressed people decide to stand up for themselves, there's always going to be a backlash from people who favor the status quo and would seek to uphold and continue the previous system of bigotry. I don't think that that certain comments that were made here tonight are going to be rare going forward. I know that there are a lot of people in this community who have invested interest in the bigoted culture of it, and I hope that the administration decides to listen to the moral voices within the community and continues to push ahead with changing the culture of bigotry at Berkeley Heights Public Schools. I appreciate a lot of the plans that the board has put out so far, especially the more inclusive bathrooms and the task force is being formed specifically for curriculum change and for cultural change at Berkeley Heights Public Schools. But I have two questions. One is that I would like to know more about, I think Dr. Varley did mention this in the previous Board of Ed meeting. I want to know more about the board's plan for diversifying school staff, including administration. And I also, I would like to hear confirmation that it is your intention to spare no expense and to go to whatever lengths are required to protect the lives of Berkeley Heights public school students. Because when we talk about this issue, we are really talking about life and death, as was pointed out by Mary, that there have been multiple deaths in the last couple years at our public schools because of this culture of bigotry and hatred that has been allowed to exist. So I want to know two things. What is the board's plan for diversifying school staff? And I want to, or maybe that's more of a question for Dr. Varley. And I also want to know whether it is your intention to do everything you can for as long as you need to change the culture at our schools.
I'll let Dr. Varley answer that, and I'll chime in at the end. Dr. Varley?
So yes, we have partnered with Central Jersey Pride, which is an organization that works to bring diversified staff to all districts in New Jersey if you're a partner with them. I know Summit's a partner, Chatham's a partner. I think West Windsor, Plainsboro's partners with them. And we have just partnered with them. We've also partnered with Teachers College of Columbia, which also has a very diversified group of individuals who they reach out to. So yes, it is a mission and a goal of mine to make sure our staff represents our student population. And we need different people to have a different culture, as well as culture is not going to be changed overnight. We know that it's going to take a good long process, but I am committed to that process. I'm committed to determining what it's going to take to make sure that we do not have this current culture where people are treated unfairly, or however you want to phrase it, because they're different or because they are perceived as different. And so it is something that I discussed with the board earlier, that we're in this for the long haul, and we will make this a committed goal to make Berkeley Heights an inclusive place for all students. And I think that's it for me.
I think the second part of his question was, Sean, is will we spare no expense to get to the bottom of this, given the importance to people's lives? And the answer to that question is we won't. We started this investigation and we will follow through to the end. We've tried to be as public as we can to both the people who we know who have mentioned things on social media who we know of. We've also reached out publicly to anybody else that wants to share a story or an incident with us. So one of our goals is to be as transparent about that And for anybody that wants to provide information to us to help in this investigation, we are open to that. And I can tell you that the board is committed to not so much sparing expenses, but to get to the bottom of this, to understand it. The investigation will close at some point, but as Dr. Varley pointed out, it is a long-term cultural fix to not just our schools, but our community that is required. So Sean, thanks for your question. Okay, Olga Brashnikova. Olga, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak. I hope you're having a good day. My name is Olga Brashnikova, and I'm a current freshman at GL. Yesterday morning, I posted information about this meeting on my social media. Throughout the day, a lot of people I have not talked to in many months felt strongly enough to reach out to me about this. We all quickly opened up to each other about our thoughts on what would happen if schools reopened with Plan A. Each conversation was the same. We were all disappointed in the school for thinking of putting us in danger. We were all scared of what would happen to us if we went back full time. We were all worried for our mental health, which everyone agreed would significantly worsen as going back to complete normal would be extremely stressful. Most of all, we were worried about our physical health, since even with the plan we use now of only half the students being in school and all the safety precautions being complete, an outbreak has already happened. People have already gotten sick. Social distancing inside school classrooms and hallways is already extremely difficult to do and will be nearly impossible with double the amount of people in the building. People will definitely get sick if we were to go back and pretend things are normal. And yes, I understand we have the choice to go full virtual, but not all households and families, including mine and those of many of my friends, are in a position to be able to do that. The pandemic is still happening, and we cannot go back and pretend it's not. As it was said at the beginning of this meeting, if we stop fighting the virus now, the results could be devastating. I really hope the school board hears the students' voices and keeps us safe and healthy, as that should be the first priority. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you very much for speaking and for representing yourself and the rest of your students. The next person is Mrs. P. And Mrs. P, before you start, can you just give us your full first name and last name, and then you can address the board?
Okay, my name is Denise Piatnachka. Okay.
Denise, welcome. Good evening.
Good evening. So I want to say a couple of things. So I'm a paraprofessional at GL, and I've been in the district for, I don't know, more than 17 years now. And I worked at Mary Kay and Woodruff. And all I want to say is that I've been in this neighborhood for a very long time. And, you know, I know there's all this conversation about diversity and all of this, but I have to say I'm diverse because I'm Puerto Rican and my husband is Ukrainian and my kids are Puerto Rican and Ukrainian. And I've never felt uncomfortable in this town, thank God. And, you know, so I feel like, and I've been working in the community for all these years, and I understand the people who may feel uncomfortable. And, you know, I don't want to say that they're not saying that that's not how how they feel. But I just want to say that I have always felt comfortable in this community. And, you know, I just feel that we have to move forward. And if you don't feel comfortable, we can do everything that can make you feel comfortable. And that's it.
Great, Denise, thank you very much for your comments this evening. Gail Bradford, you're up next. Good evening, Gail.
Good evening. Good evening, Doug. Let me get my... Okay, good evening, Doug. Thank you. Can you hear me, Doug?
I'm sorry, Gail, you're back. That was my fault. I apologize. Your screen moved and I muted the wrong person, so I apologize. Good evening, Gail. Start again.
That's okay. Good evening, Doug. Thank you. My name is Gail Bradford. I am a 62-year-old 62-year resident of Berkeley Heights, and I am an alumni of the Berkeley Heights school system from kindergarten through 12th grade. I have taught military children on bases for 13 years, and now I am currently teaching my 21st year in Berkeley Heights School District. I am highly invested in our Berkeley Heights community and in our schools, and I do look forward to going back to normalization when this pandemic is over. I just thank you for the opportunity to make my request known to the Board of Ed. So I currently teach second grade at Thomas P. Hughes, and the current safety protocols are inadequate in hybrid Plan B and would be dangerous in Plan A. For example, the plastic cardboard barriers, they fall off the desks. They are not attached. The children do not sit up close enough to let them be protective. The plexiglass clear barrier separating the teachers and the students are only 3 by 4 feet apart and still allow the particulates to flow around them. The distances between the students and staff have shrunk from 6 feet to 3 feet, from the top of the head of a student to the top of the head of another student. And the mask breaks that we have at the elementary level, and they're done by grade level outside. And they're outside the buildings where the students are all huddled underneath the awnings during cold or rainy weather without their masks while they're having their snacks. These are the current conditions under Plan B. If Plan A is implemented next week, these safety protocols will become too difficult to implement. Hybrid B is working now for us. To leap from an all virtual this week to Plan A, all students at the elementary level, is a leap too far for safety. I request that the hybrid Plan B continue in the elementary schools until perhaps the end of January, until the conditions change. Thank you.
Gail, thank you very much for your comments this evening. The next person is Carlise. Is it Carlise? Is that your first name? Nope. Okay. Seeing nobody. Oh, Carlise, hold on. Oh, okay. I see nobody else with their hand raised to address the board. Oh, hold on. As I said that, I stand corrected. Joe Maselli. Joe, good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, Doug. How are you? Happy New Year. My name is Joe Maselli. I am a teacher at Governor Livingston High School. I teach in the math department. I am also the director for the school musical for the past 10 years or so. And in the past, before that, for the fall play. I have two concerns I want to bring up real quick. One of them is that in, I believe, October, I was approved to be director of the fall play. We then went into planning mode, and then within days I found out, without anyone talking to us, that the show had been canceled and the stipend had been rescinded, even though we had, because there was no way to get the show done fast enough, even though we were in the midst of making a plan to make it work. It kind of skipped over coming to us to find out what was going on. And while I know we're in an irregular situation, after the Instagram posts came out those weeks ago, I reached out to my former theater students to see how they were and what their reactions to those were. And hearing so many of them say that things were traumatic at school, but the theater programs and the art programs and the music programs are things that kind of saved them. It kind of broke my heart to feel like we let down this current class of students that they had, that they did not have those outlets this year so far. And I know I'm willing, and Mrs. Tallarico, who I often work with, and Mrs. Procaccini and Mr. Voorhees, to make something work however we can to get these kids involved, who I think really need this artistic outlet and the community of people that comes with this. So I'm asking, I don't know who this goes to immediately, if it's our school administration or to the board or to Dr. Varley, but we need to get the ball rolling on things we can do in this upcoming semester so that we can make that happen, whether it's something virtual, whether it's something highly social distanced. I think it really needs to happen, and I'm imploring the board to make sure that goes through. Secondly, I want to just echo the other teachers who have said that going to Plan A is not safe for anyone. I personally think Plan B is not safe for anyone. I say this coming out of my second quarantine due to being exposed at school. It's not a great feeling that every day you walk in that building, you're worried what's going to happen. The data's out there that this new strain is more communicable, affects children more, and I feel like we're not heeding that advice, that we have to be more careful. It's been said, another voice saying it, several other teachers have said it, but have not gone on the call tonight. Maybe they will soon. Please take that under advisement. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your comments. Marissa Christine. Marissa, good evening.
Good evening. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to echo what Sean said. We are kind of on the other end of the spectrum from him. I realize he went through his education here in Berkeley Heights, and our kids are just starting their education here in Berkeley Heights. I commend the board for moving so quickly with identifying or wanting to identify students that have had troubles in the past and creating the task force. I do hope the task force is something that will continue to grow and develop over time. My thought is that if kids obviously do not feel safe at school, there is absolutely no way they will be able to learn. We've not been in the community long, and we are one of the families, and I've had conversations with other relatively new families to Berkeley Heights, where it's crossed our minds to move. We haven't been invested too long. Is this the community for us? I mean, listening to last week's call, I couldn't sleep after it. Hearing kids that young talk about issues and things that they had been through, I mean, it is, I don't know how it isn't one of the top priorities and should be one of the top priorities going forward, because again, if kids are not safe and comfortable, they will never learn. And I realize these issues go on in other districts, but you know, the tremendous outpouring of students coming forward. I mean, there is obviously an issue here, which I think we've all acknowledged. And again, I commend the board for the steps that they're taking. I just hope it's enough, and I hope that it continues. That's it.
Marissa, thank you very much for your comments. I'll just share that this is the absolute highest priority of the board. And thank you for acknowledging the steps that we've taken, but we've just begun. We have a long way to go down this path, and only until we see changes will we know that we've gotten along this journey.
Thank you.
Damian Facey. I never know if Damian's going to show up or if Toya is going to show up when I do that.
It's Toya, sorry.
Okay.
We have the same account, so I apologize. I am not going to go on camera because I look kind of crazy, so I won't do that. But I did just want to address the board and just say, one, I am glad that there are people in the community who have indicated that they have not experienced bias and discrimination in Berkeley Heights, whether it's in the school system or just in general. However, we cannot ignore those who have. While many may think that this impact is just something that is limited to just school bullying. A lot of times this impact is very long-term. It has an impact on the child's psyche. It has an impact on the way the child perceives themselves. So I just wanted to kind of address that. I don't think that this is something that we can just move on. This is something that as a community as a whole, we need to address. And it's not something that we sweep under the rug. I think what we saw in the December meeting is we were sweeping it under the rug, and we have a huge lump in our rug. And it is now exposed, and we have a duty as a community to address it, not to ignore it, not to move on. So I'm very happy for those in the community who have not experienced bias and discrimination, but there are people in the community who have. And we have an obligation as members of Berkeley Heights to address it, to make everyone feel comfortable. And so I just wanted to make those comments because I think it's very important for us not to see this as something just to move on. It is something to address, and it is something that we need to change, and it's a cultural change. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We couldn't agree with you more. And as many people know, we have a partner with the Berkeley Heights Diversity Council that Toya is a member of. So we completely agree with your comments and welcome our continued relationship with you. Steve Seabelts. Steve, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Einstein. Appreciate it. And good evening to all the Board of Education members and Dr. Varley. Thanks for giving me the time to speak a little bit tonight. Appreciate it. I am a school social worker in the district. And my home school is Governor Livingston High School. And I'm just kind of here to share my experience, but more also speak on the behalf of my wife, Rebecca Seabelts, who is a middle school special education teacher, and just share a little bit about kind of the ordeal that we've been through these last 2.5 weeks or so. Rebecca, with her permission, she's in recovery from currently from COVID. Where she was exposed in her classroom. Just want to share a little bit about that. First of all, I just want to tell you, before I go into the ordeal that Rebecca and our family has been through, that Columbia Middle School Administration, Governor Livingston Administration, Special Services Administration, staff at the central office have been unbelievable. In terms of their outpouring of support. I just needed to say that up front. And, to go beyond that, our coworkers, our friends, both at Columbia and Governor Livingston have been unbelievable, above and beyond to support us. And we're grateful for all of that. Rebecca and I are really invested in this community, in the school district. She, again, was exposed in the classroom and got sick right prior to break. She is young. She is healthy, with the exception of asthma. I asked her permission. I can tell you her age. She's 42. And what happened to her is, she got quite sick, had 2 emergency room visits, was diagnosed with several pulmonary embolisms, has an array of symptoms still, and that's why she's not here on tonight. She's 2.5 weeks in of recovery, and it's going to be a long road with a number of specialists, pulmonologists, hematologists, cardiologists, to name a few. It has been a journey, this break. She luckily was able to spend, and I say luckily because we know that there are situations much more dire than Rebecca's. She was able to make it home in isolation for 10 days over the break. We have 3 kids, including a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old. The holidays were challenging, to say the least, namely with Rebecca's health, but Christmas was spent over FaceTime with my kids and trying to keep as much normalcy as possible. It was very challenging. And again, we're still dealing with it. Just so grateful that I have tested negative. Our boys have tested negative. And really, I'm not supposed to name names of staff, but the school nurse at Governor Livingston, and you all know who she is, was unbelievable with us, unbelievable with suggestions. And the school nurse was at the middle school helpful as well. So we're grateful. So although it has been an ordeal, we know that it could be much worse. And I've learned a lot of things about COVID, things that I never thought I would. We had been very safe, namely to keep our elderly parents safe because they were still involved in childcare. And what we learned after all of this with Rebecca, with the hospital visits, with the pulmonary embolisms, that she in the medical community is considered a mild case. And that blew me away. And what the marker for moderate is hospital admission. That, when you're reading moderate cases, that is the bar. And that blew me away, I got to tell you. So all of that said, Rebecca has a mild case. And to me, I'm living with it. I'm taking care of her and the kids. It blows my mind that that's mild. That being said, I wrote a few notes, didn't have a lot of time for it, so I'll try to make it brief and wrap up. But I'm at the high school. We're remote till the 25th. Rebecca, is in her situation, but I needed to speak up on behalf of my colleagues at the lower levels. If this could happen to Rebecca, then we are so fearful, and I speak for Rebecca too, we are so fearful that somebody who is more vulnerable will succumb to this. A staff member, children are namely asymptomatic, and we are very fearful. And with the numbers going up, with the holidays, and believe me, with the testing, with everything, I waited 2 hours even having an appointment to get tested. It was unbelievable. They're jammed. And the ERs are jammed, and Rebecca experienced it firsthand. So with all that said, the numbers coming up, I just ask to please consider erring on the side of caution to protect our staff, our really valuable staff, and delay plan A. Consider and even considering remote for the middle school and lower levels as GL. I work in the different levels. There are siblings of older siblings of the middle school and even elementary school. So just things to consider. I thank you for your time. Again, I thank the Berkeley Heights staff of being unbelievable with both myself and Rebecca. We feel like we're just surrounded by a lot of support, and we're grateful for that. And again, we're just so thankful. The doctors had talked about that it could have been fatal for Rebecca. And at the end of the day, the fact that Rebecca will make a recovery is all that matters at the bottom line. But we just are so fearful for other staff members. And we just please want them to stay safe and healthy, and all of you as well. And thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Steve, thank you very much for your comments. Let me say two things. Number one, most importantly, a speedy recovery to Rebecca. I am encouraged by it. You sound like she is on the road to recovery. It sounds like she's had an awful experience. So on behalf of the board and the entire school ecosystem, our best wishes for her for a speedy recovery. I am encouraged by what you said. If nothing else, what I have seen, this is my starting my 16th year on the board, the compassion of our community, the compassion of our teaching staff, of people who've come to help out our teachers and our families in times of need. I can think of multiple times where people have come to help a teacher or a family that has been in need. And I'm very encouraged and always happy to hear that so many staff members have come to yours and your families and your wife's aid. So although it sounds like quite dark times that your wife has been through, at least sounds like there's been some light in the amount of support she's gotten from the rest of our community. And I am always encouraged to hear that. And I think it really speaks to the heart of who we are. It doesn't mean we don't have challenges within our system. I know you're probably I didn't count it, but probably the 12th or 14th teacher who's spoken this evening to us. And we've had teachers speak at many other meetings as well, but I'm encouraged to do that. So please pass along our best wishes to Rebecca. And again, I'm always encouraged to hear about that. So thanks again, Steve. The next person is it Zangu? I apologize if I did not get your first name correct. I'm sorry, we can't hear you. Okay, I think she dropped off. The next person I see is Karima Bryant. Karima, good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
Good evening, welcome.
Thank you. I wanted to just address a few things. I'm listening to the many teachers who are talking about their concerns with Plan A. And I do want, as a parent, I am also concerned with the move to Plan A. And I want to understand what the process is for Dr. Bali and the board, given these concerns that we're hearing. How are we going to take that into consideration? And then what steps or decisions are going to be made? So that was one comment that I wanted to make. The other comment that I wanted to make is regarding the comments about racial injustice and discrimination. I think we all probably witnessed in horror what happens in our country when we let bad behavior go unchecked. So I think it's really important for us as the Berkeley Heights community to make sure, as we're making decisions around discrimination, that we are holding people accountable for bad behavior, and that we clearly outline that there will be repercussions and punishment for bad behavior so that it is deterred and that we can discontinue it as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Great, thanks for your comments. Let me address your first question, which is how do we deal with the comments and questions that we get at a meeting like this? So the administration and the board members are always listening for community input. And although we don't comment on everybody's comment, it doesn't mean that it's not resonating with us. So we do take those views into account, as well as the views we get outside of the board meeting. So I haven't counted, but there's probably been 30 or so people who've spoken this evening. There's probably an equal, if not greater number. In fact, there's a far greater number of people who also give us feedback via email or via phone conversations that Dr. Varley and I and other members of the board have with the public. So we take all those inputs in making decisions. So I can assure you that not only do we take input from people like parents and students and teachers, but experts. Dr. Varley talked about talking to the Department of Ed and the Board of Health, the Union County Board of Health. So there's a lot of people who provide input into decisions we make. And frankly, sometimes we've changed our decisions after we've gotten additional information. I don't have to tell anybody here that this has been a constantly evolving challenge in education ever since March 10th of last year. And we continue to take a lot of input from various members in making those decisions. The next person I see has the initials of DP. I'm going to unmute you, DP, and first ask if you can give us your first name and your last name.
Hi, my name is Dawn Phillips. I am the mother of a kindergartner and a second grader. I have two concerns that I'd like addressed. One is about my kindergartner. He is in AM kindergarten with Mrs. Twill. She is amazing, and I have absolutely zero problems with the teachers. I have a huge concern with the amount of actual school my kindergartner has this year. Full day kindergarten has been altogether, I think there are 14 full day kindergartners. They've been together now for months, every day at school. My kindergartner had 7 school days where he was in school. In November, I didn't count for December, and he will have 5 in January. I guess my first question is, what is the plan for kindergarten to not be a lost year? My second question is about my second grader who is at Hughes. You've now heard several teachers talk about the problems with the COVID protocols. Specifically, earlier it was mentioned that the boards fall off the desks and the kids are huddled together. And I'd like to know the specific practical plan that the board has for helping the teachers keep the children safe for Plan A, when the teachers are telling you in practical matters that these things don't work.
Great, thanks for your question, Dr. Varley. The first one is to address the amount of time that kindergartners have in school. So why don't you start there?
So I will say we know that it seems to be AM kindergarten that seems to fall under the Monday holidays, any of those items that keep them from being in school. And I know Miss Kopaz and Miss Carroll have been looking into switching some of the days so that our AM kindergarten will receive more instruction than they have been. So there is a plan to rectify that situation. It should be coming out relatively soon to change some of the dates around so that our AM kindergarten will receive more days of instruction. So I will assure you that that is happening. As far as
PM kindergarten only has 7 days this month. So, yes, AM has slightly less, but that's still an egregiously small amount of time in school compared to what you're giving the full-time kindergarten kids and what your plan is to give the 1st through 5th graders.
Absolutely. And I understand that. It's one of those things that we don't have enough time in the day, because if we put AM kindergarten and PM kindergarten on top of each other, it would extend our teaching staff day. So we are trying to be creative. We're working on it. It's one of those things that is quite difficult when you only have 2.5 hours with the kids. And so it's a struggle right now. But we are working on figuring out half-day kindergarten and how to get them in more.
And Dr. Varley, the second question was around, we've heard some feedback from some of our teaching staff this evening, especially the elementary ones, talking about some of the challenges of Plan A, things like, what's the practical plan even with some of those separators? So can you talk a little bit about what you plan to do and also your conversations with what you've learned from what other districts have done with their Plan A plans?
Yes. So as far as I will have to look into the dividers. I know that the principals did address this. The K-5 principals have addressed it and have worked with their custodians to make the barriers more sturdy and fitting on the desks more. It's generally a management issue if students are gathering in circles. And so that is something that we will also I'll address with the K-5 principals as well, that our students should not be gathering in circles to keep warm or to have their snacks. So that's something I will address with them, because that's a new phenomenon that I heard about tonight.
Great, thank you, Dr. Varley. Nancy Dasty. Nancy, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Good evening. Happy New Year. Welcome new board members. I just want to ask a question that piggybacking on what Ann Clifton said regarding the bus. So I'm concerned that having 2 children of my own that ride the bus, is there no filtration on the bus? We're talking about cold weather coming up, and we're talking about longer rides to sports. And if we are going to Plan A, we're talking about more kids on the bus with longer rides to school. Are we really keeping the windows open in 15-degree mornings? Is this our filtration? The windows down? I'm confused. Can someone elaborate on that?
Donna, do you want to talk about what we're doing for the buses during the winter time?
We are having the bus drivers keep the windows open on the buses. With the buses are cleaned daily, sanitized and cleaned. Most of the bus runs are less than a half hour, the way that their routes have been designed, and with the number of students on them, we're trying to keep them as short as possible. As far as the filtration system on the bus, I'd have to get back to you about that.
Okay, please get back to me on that because that is concerning. The afternoons might be a little bit better, but if you have a 15-degree morning, that's quite cold. And if we're sitting in a school with windows down, these children are going to be cold. And I'm concerned about sending my children back to school if this is what's going to be happening. If there's no filtration on the bus, we need to know that.
Okay, Nancy, I'll make sure that Donna will get back to you. Thanks for your question.
Thank you.
Tonight. Next up is Jeremy Marks.
What'd you get?
Jeremy, good evening.
Good evening. Hi. So I'm an 8th grade teacher, so I teach at CMS, and this past year has just been, trying to gather as much information as I possibly can. And one of the real challenges that we're facing with COVID is that so much of the information is just evolving. And information that we thought was solid, we learned later that, okay, perhaps that's not the right way to go. And so just the one thing that that I've heard mentioned a bit tonight is the dividers that are being used in the classrooms. And so when when COVID was first starting, like we thought it was all like fomite transmission, touching things. And so we all went crazy buying hand sanitizer and Lysol and whatnot. Then the thought was that it spread through large droplets and people coughing. And it is spread that way, but that is not the main mode of transmission. The main mode of transmission for COVID, for asymptomatic people, is speaking. And COVID is now, we know that it's just airborne, it's aerosolized. And people speaking, people breathing are, that's the main way that people get infected with it. And what the scientific community has now learned is that these dividers can cause more harm than good. Because just like if there's a fence and, if you've seen the snow kind of gets built up against a fence after a snowstorm, the same thing is going to happen with the air in the room. And so you're not getting the good exchange of air when you have all of these dividers. So that's just one example where our understanding of the safety protocols is evolving. And I am just deeply concerned that we are not doing what we need to. And it's unbelievably difficult because this is not just our district that faces this problem. It's like a worldwide problem of keeping up with the science and keeping up with the best information. There's so much information out there, but I am just concerned that we are taking a more aggressive stance using old information. All right. Thank you, though, for the opportunity to speak.
Jeremy, thank you very much as well. Seeing nobody else looking to address the board, I will close the citizens hearing for this meeting. I want to make one just clarifying comment. We heard a number of comments about Plan A, and the clarifying comment is I just want to make sure that everybody understands that when we go back to school on Monday, we have different hybrid options for each of the schools. So the elementary school is the only school that has the Plan A. The middle school has Plan B, which we currently have, and the high school is still on all remote. So there were a couple of comments tonight about where we have Plan A. So I just want to clarify that it's at the elementary school is the only one that has the change to Plan A. Moving on from the citizens hearing, item 19, the adoption of the Code of Ethics.
I move the adoption of Code of Ethics.
I will second that.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? So if all board members can come off mute and do the roll call. Roll call, Donna.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Chinchuli,
Yes.
Mr. D'Aquila,
Yes.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
Ms. Riley,
Yes.
Mrs. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Reinstein,
Yes. Item 20, meeting dates for 2021.
I move item 20, meeting dates.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? I have one discussion. There is a meeting proposed for Tuesday, June 22nd on this calendar. I propose that we move that to Thursday, June 24th. We have traditionally held our meetings on Thursday. I do think it's important for the public to count on a level of consistency for us. I know we have at times in previous years moved it for special reasons where we had conflicts. But at this point, 5 or 6 months in advance, I propose that we move that meeting to Thursday, the 24th, instead of Tuesday, the 22nd. Is there anybody who has any other comment about that? So I will propose that we modify item 20A to include changing the June 22nd meeting to Thursday, June 24th. And then we'll modify the motion in the second to reflect that. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Chinchuli,
Yes.
Mr. D'Aquila,
Yes.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
Ms. Riley,
Yes.
Mrs. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Reinstein,
Yes. Administration, item number 21.
I'll make a motion that we accept items A through F. I believe I can't make the motion for G, if that's correct, Greg. Doug.
No, you can, Jordan, you can.
I can make the
move-
motion
yeah,
You can move all of 21, and then your vote will be recorded as which
for
ones
A
are
through F.
for Mountainside.
Got it. Then I'll make the motion for approving administration, all administration items, A through G.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Chinchuli,
Yes.
Mr. D'Aquila,
Yes.
Mrs. Penna,
I'll say yes to items A through D, F and G. No to E. I just had some concerns about some of the winter sports.
okay. Ms. Riley,
Yes.
Mrs. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Reinstein,
Yes. Education, item number 22.
I'll move education items A and B. Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Dr. Verley, could I just ask you, or maybe it's, or Mr. McKinney, either one, we have talked a lot about what we're doing in the areas of diversity. And on the agenda under item A are 2 new courses that are proposed at the high school that attempt to address some of the diversity challenge that we have. Could I just ask one of you to maybe just talk for 30 seconds about what each one of those is that we're planning to propose for next year?
I'm going to turn it over to Scott. He has the ins and outs.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. Yes, we have 2 courses this year. It's fewer than our typical, but with the COVID crisis, we've not been able to do some work. But as this was an important part of our strategic plan, we continued the work on this through last spring and into the fall, really with the myself and the district supervisors and the high school teachers. These 2 courses are elective courses. One is a social studies elective entitled Race in America in the 21st Century, and it'll provide an opportunity to really take a more of a deeper dive at some of the historical events and circumstances and some of the things that have built some of the structural blocks in our society and allow us to have good conversation. So that will be a half-year elective for 9th through 12th grade students starting next year, pending your approval. On the English language arts side, we've built off our other elective course, music and lyrics, to add a roots and rhythm course. Again, this both of these courses have been shared with students and having, we have measured some level of student engagement and interest in taking these elective courses. And this will again combine some historical look at music and using lyrics as a form of literature that will hopefully engage students in discussion and learning about different cultures as well.
Great, Scott. Thanks very much for that clarification. Roll call.
I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Robert.
I think this is great. It seems to be related to diversity. I suppose my question for the administration, either Dr. Varley or Mr. McKinney, is what about other types of education other than classes that may be related to diversity? For example, has anything been done on guest speakers? I know that was raised at the meeting in December. That was well attended. That's also, to me, kind of an education as well.
It definitely is an education. I will say that right now, and it's something we may consider later on, but right now we generally only have the kids in classes for 4 hours. And it's hard to take away instructional time. While we think it's very important to have guest speakers and have people come in, right now we only have them for 4 hours. And I think it's the middle school we have for 4 hours and 40 minutes. And, it's one of those things that we will get back to. And it could be sooner rather than later. Right now, we're trying to get as much education, academics as we possibly can at this moment.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Roll call.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Chinchuli,
Yes.
Mr. D'Aquila,
Yes.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
Ms. Riley,
Yes.
Mrs. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Reinstein,
Yes. Personnel, item 23.
Yes, I'll move personnel items 23A through M.
Second.
Motion and a second discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Chinchuli,
Yes.
Mr. D'Aquila,
Yes.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
Ms. Riley,
Yes.
Mrs. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Reinstein,
Yes. Business, item number 24.
I move to accept and approve business items A through C.
Seconded.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Chinchuli,
Yes.
Mr. D'Aquila,
Yes.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
Ms. Riley,
Yes.
Mrs. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Reinstein,
Yes. Item 25, finance.
Yes, I'll move item 25A through D, but before that is seconded, I just want to say that I did review the bills electronically this month and everything looked in order.
I'll second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Let me add a special thank you to Chris. This was the first meeting of the year and we did not have anybody assigned to review the bills. And on short notice, she stepped up and did that for us. So Chris, an extra special thank you on short notice for doing that. As a minor note, Donna and her staff will be sending out a note for the bill review list for the rest of the year. Stay tuned for that, and then you'll have your month to do that. So again, Chris, thank you.
No problem.
okay, Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Chinchulli,
Yes.
Mr. D'Aquila, Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
Ms. Riley,
Yes.
Mrs. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Reinstein.
Yes. Is there any other business to come before the board?
Yes, I have a quick question for Scott McKinney. I know it's late, but talking about these new elective courses just sort of, jogged my memory, Scott. I know that, or I recall that we had a civics elective course that we added at the middle school, I believe, a year or so ago. And we were talking about kind of civics 102 at the high school. And I don't know where we are at that, but given the events of the last couple of days, I just can't imagine that it's something that isn't more important for our students, is to really have a great appreciation for how their government works or is supposed to work. So I really encourage us, if we haven't developed that yet, to kind of put it on the priority list for next year.
No, it's absolutely part of what we're looking at, both building that course for the middle school, and as the new standards, we're in the process of updating state standards, and that will be integrated as part of the high school as well. But we're waiting to see what those standards are going to be before we maneuver our courses.
I hope it's mandated by the state, because we need it.
Absolutely.
I have one item for new business or other business. It's a question. Someone spoke up a short while ago mentioning, we know we have the vaccine coming. It reminded me a few days ago, I registered for the vaccine myself through the state website. No problem there for me at my age. I tried to register my daughter, age 12, CMS student, and it said no. It rejected that age and said only 16 years or older could register through that state website. Now, my understanding is the Pfizer one is FDA approved for 12 and older. The Moderna one, I believe, is 18 or older. So I suppose my question is, what are we going to do regarding students who cannot get vaccinated because there's no approved vaccine for younger students?
So as I'm sure you're aware, we have not a great deal. We have a small population of students who do not vaccinate for any reason, such as the MMR, mumps, measles, rubella, polio, anything. Because due to certain reasons, they don't get vaccinated. I assume, and I'm not sure, the DOE has not given a ruling on this as of yet. I assume we would have students who their parents would opt them out of the COVID-19 vaccine. What we know is that children will probably be the last ones on the list to get the vaccine.
But I don't think it's approved. That's the idea. My understanding.
No, it's not approved right now. I assume it will be there will be much more testing prior to putting it in to doing children 12 and below.
Okay, thank you.
And the last item that I have is, I have talked to each board member about committee roles for next year. I will be sending tomorrow a list of committees that we have and the liaisons for next year. Again, I've talked to each of you individually about that. So you'll see that. We will have it on the agenda for the next meeting to approve. We did go forward with the board's recommendation to combine the Finance and Facilities Committee, which was a board recommendation at the last meeting, or I think the meeting before. So stay tuned to that. Obviously, if you have any questions, we can you just drop me a note. We can talk about that. With that, if there's any other new business, Mike, I'll ask you for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Yes, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Great, thank you. We will adjourn for this evening. We are back at our next meeting in January. Thanks again. Have a good rest of the night and a good weekend. Good night now.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Good night.